Buongiorno a tutti.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to those who are here with us, and good morning to those who are following us online. Well, to say that education is the driving force of the development of our country is so important that President Mario Draghi wanted to talk about this during his inaugural speech. So, well, we need to understand why, with an agreement, general agreement on the importance of education, our country still has some statistical data that are not particularly satisfying with regards to education in school. And I'm going to quote some data from OECD. 19% of people between 25 and 64 have only tertiary school diploma. Italy has the third highest level of young people who do not study, do not work, the so-called NEETs. And so 26% of our young people are NEETs against 14% in the rest of Europe. The teachers in Italy are the oldest in Europe. Most are over 50 years old. 3.6% of the GDP is spent for education, whereas in the rest of OECD countries, the average is 5%. In 2018, students in Italy in science and in reading got marks that were below the European average. So the image of the problem is clear: not enough investments in school and education, results that are in a way dissatisfying, a great gap between the north and the south, insufficient investments also in terms of the whole professional life, and a percentage of graduated and that is not enough. But we need to make a diagnosis of this problem. Why are we facing this preoccupying situation? How can we face at least parts of this problem? We need to talk about this here and now, and we need to talk about this with our distinguished guests. We need to talk about this with our politicians, because politicians can lead to research and identification of problems. So I would like to say something that is in a way provocative for our guests this morning. Our country is suffering from a while because of an excessively centralized government. So we have differences between the different regions in the countries and in the different schools. Those who organize the school system do it in a very centralistic way. Schools that don't have any kind of autonomy. They cannot take different roads. They cannot choose their staff. And enterprises need to organize their training policies through processes that are defined by the government and by the regions. So there is no room to actually free the autonomous energies of those subjects that could lead to innovation and new investments in human capital. We would need a higher level of autonomy, creativity, deregulation. We should enhance those private and public realities in the third sector that do believe in the value of human capital and education and propose innovative solutions. So, unfortunately, politicians seem to be suspicious of this kind of reality. They seem to prefer a homogeneous solution where problems are solved through decrees and no innovative solutions are sought. in a pamphlet of 2004 entitled "If People Were Educated, Everyone Would Live Better," the teachers of Communion and Liberation wrote, in a society in decay where men operate that have at heart the good of everyone is the hope of everyone today, looking for the value of our lives so that we can find back that sense of responsibility that can contribute to a better and peaceful future for our country. Today we would like to reflect on what this means in the present situation in view of the new school year, and also bearing in mind what Mario Draghi said when opening this meeting. So we have a few questions for our guests, whom I would like to introduce now. I would like to thank them for being here with us today. So I would like to welcome Ferruccio de Bortoli, who is the president of Longanesi and of the association Vidas. Good morning. And then Giorgio de Rita, Secretary General of CENSIS. Stella Gelmini, who is the leader of the group of Forza Italia in the Chamber of Deputees in Italy. Giancarlo Giorgetti, Vice Secretary of the Lega, and he is an Italian MP. Maurizio Lupi, who is the president of the Parliamentary Group for Subsidiarity. Simona Malpezzi, State Vice Secretary for the Relations with the Parliament. Fabio Rampelli, who is Vice President of the Chamber of Deputies. And Gabriele Toccafondi, who is an Italian MP.
Allora,
So we will start by asking a question that is related to my introduction, and I'm asking to Dr. De Bortoli, why in Italy the importance of education for the economic development of the country is not understood? Why isn't there enough trust in education? What are the effects? What can we do concretely to actually try and relaunch more decisive commitment to education and in our country? So I would like to pass now the word to Dr. De Bortoli. Good morning to everyone, and thank you for your invitation here at the meeting. I would like to give an answer to this extremely interesting introduction by Professor Agasisti. Our main preoccupation should be to avoid that after the pandemic, which is not over yet, unfortunately, the same situation takes place as after the financial crisis of 2008-2009. That is to say, a fall in the university enrollments and a higher school dropout rate. So that means a decay in the education of our human capital. This means that politicians need to pay great attention to it, but not only politicians, also civic society needs to commit itself. Education and the improvement of capital, of human capital, should be at the top of our agendas, and we need to admit that this is not the case. I think it is really a problem, the fact that we talk about school when we talk about a school desk, even with rolling school desks, and we do not talk about the human capital, just how this human capital should be sitting in class and not how it could be improved.
Abbiamo forse qualche problema di connessione. proviamo nel caso a ristabilirla.
There are some problems with the connection. Technical problems. Well, in the meantime, I will turn to Mr. De Rita, Dr. De Rita. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for this invitation, and I will go back to what Dr. De Bortoli was saying. So you actually asked three questions. The first is why? Why have we lost sight of the themes of education in school? What are the causes and the effects, and what can we do? So, to answer the first question, I think that the main reason is that everybody talks about school, but school is not in the heart of many. We talk a lot about school and education, but we will probably forget all about it in a few weeks, because I think we have actually lost sight of an essential aspect. What is the purpose of school and education? We need to prepare our young people for a professional life. In the 50s and 60s, the school and its purpose and what it was meant to do was really at the center of public debate. Then we, in a way, started to say that school was not meant to create future workers, but rather to create persons, people. So, well, this is important because independently from the economic situation, the different aspects of life were included in school and education. But we unfortunately forgot the structural aspects of school, and I will just mention a few. The first one is the problem of the school dropout. We do not have data, but during the lockdown we lost about 12 to 15% of our students. That means that they never attended lessons, they did not participate in school activities. So this is a really high percentage. So we need to actually try and reduce this dropout rate. Then there is a second aspect, that of social inclusion. As you were saying, our young people, 15 years of age, for instance, have a level of skills that are below the average in Europe. But there is a great difference between young people living in good economic situation and others who live in bad economic situations. Those young people who do not have good economic possibilities, we have a 42% of young people who have not reached the necessary skill level, against 14% for those who have good economic situation. Then we have a high number of foreign students, and there is a gap, even ever-increasing gap between Italian and foreign students. We have about 900,000 foreign students in our schools today. Yes, we talk about integration, about food, about other aspects, but there is not enough. One building out of two is not certified. They were mainly built for completely different purposes. Before the lockdown, 9 schools out of 10 didn't have a sufficient internet connection. So we really have also a structural problem connected to bureaucracy. Over the last 20, 30 years, we did not think on how to reorganize bureaucracy, as for instance the tenders for information system on the part of the Italian ministry started 3 years ago, but contracts are still to be signed. So we need almost 4 years to actually give out these contracts. So these are structural problems that are still to be solved. Then the second question, cause and effect. Well, these are two things that are in a way interconnected. So we have, as you said before, we are lagging behind in investments in the school system. If we take a look at the costs we have paid for the education of our young people in comparison with the purchasing power with reference to France and the United Kingdom, 28% less for secondary schooling, 42% for the whole of the school system, and for the first cycle of university, 61% less. So that means that this lack of awareness that in the future school is as essential part of our development led to a decrease in investments. Then there is a second element, a second effect, so to speak, of this structural crisis that is due to a lack of planning. If we look at the data in elementary school, this year, in comparison to last year, not 10 years ago, we will lose 41,000 students, pupils. That is to say, well, the same number as the inhabitants of the city of Macerata. So we will have less and less children and young people, and this is a structural problem we need to tackle, and it is a consequence of our lack of attention. Then there is a third element, as Dr. De Bortoli was saying before. We are in a way we are not investing in human capital, and we have an enrollment rate before the COVID that is about 50%. That is to say that one young person between 18 and 19 years of age enrolled at university. After the SARS experience, we will have a decrease we had a decrease about 4 to 6%. After the COVID pandemic, will be expecting a decrease between 8 to 10%. So, as you said, and as Dr. De Bortoli was saying, less than 14% of the Italian population has a university degree. So the consequence of this lack of attention for school is the lack of an alignment with the needs of enterprises. Enterprises today hire new staff with low skills for more than 50%, 45% secondary school degree, 12% university degrees. If we look at 1,600,000 young people looked for by enterprises in 2019%, in some sectors, 49% of enterprises say we cannot find people with the needed skills. So we prefer to hire young people without a diploma, and then we have to train them. Then there is a third aspect, and then I conclude. I believe that we have, first of all, replan school and the school system. Also from the physical point of view, so to speak, buildings need to be replanned, organized. What are the characteristics that a building has to have to become a school? And what are all the technological needs? So, well, we really need to have a practical project. Otherwise, we will be trapped for another 30 years in this situation. Then, obviously, we needed to turn our schools in safe place, but there is much more that we have to do. Then, there is also the need to bring the problems linked with the school system to the center of our political debate. We cannot talk about this for a few weeks and then forget all about it, but we needed to carry out some research activities. We at the CENSIS live on the themes of research, but we actually have a lot of problems in trying to make research studies on the school system. Then again, I believe it is important to raise awareness that we have to move fast. There is no time left. We have wasted too much time already, and we need to do more than just talk. We needed to start and act, because otherwise the road to development and the school as an essential component of this development won't be found anymore. Thank you. Thank you for these reflections and also for the data that you provided us. I believe that we are now ready to listen to Dr. De Bortoli. I think we will we won't have any problem anymore. Yes, I hope you can hear me. I'm sorry. Well, I listened with great interest to what Dr. Rita said. Well, actually, we do know what the situation is in terms of a school system in Italy. And we also know what are the problems, the difficulties for young people to enter the labor market. They are often underpaid, but we also need to stress the fact that the offer of qualified jobs is not enough to meet the needs of the production sector. We talked a lot about the need to have diplomas and university degrees that were closer to the needs of our industry and our enterprises. And here I want to be a little bit provocative, and I'm talking to the friends who are there in Rimini. We need to say in a very frank way that taking care of our human capital is not our primary goal. Yes, it is something that we know we have to do, but there is always something else that comes first. Maybe to invest in young people does not provide that immediate consensus that politicians can have by adopting some measures that are actually against young people, like the so-called quota 100, the recent measure that has been adopted. And the private living classes of this country should really ask themselves, am I really doing everything that I can and everything that is needed to promote the work of young people and the training and the education of young people? Because I really have the feeling that this class that actually, these are the people that send their children to study abroad, actually. So what happens is not interested in what happens in Italian universities, because they believe they can solve the problem differently, in another way. So we opened up the country in May after the lockdown, but actually our country is not open, because a country where schools are closed is not open. And we continue saying that the country is open, that we have opened up everything, but we have not. And this demonstrates that school is not so important for most of our leaders and politicians. And I think we should promote investments in training and education. And we could, for instance, talk about the fact that we still talk about the weight of this school lobby. We have, and I'm talking to the experts that are here today, we have a ratio that is different from that of other countries between teachers and professors and students. We think that schools should promote the importance of an evaluation because that actually marks the degree of civilization of a country. So this is something we have to talk about. So, well, we should, first of all, and I conclude, find an answer to this question. Why is human capital and why are young people never at the top of our agendas, at the top of our actions, our activities as a government? When things are done for the school system, we find solutions that are actually not enough because they do not promote this real educational emergency. And this is, well, something that is recurrent in this year's meeting. So if we have an educational emergency, we should have, for instance, on the labor market, an idea, a commitment, also a moral commitment on the part of the enterprises. We have over 2 million young people between 15 and 22 years of age who do not study. They are the so-called neets. And so this is really a waste of talent, of people. And what will they be in a few years? Why don't we commit ourselves to help these people? Let's promote the tertiary sector, which has a great number of opportunities. There's a strong demand in that sector. So why don't Italian universities, and I'm moving to a different topic. Anyway, why do Italian universities receive limited private contributions? If we take into account, for instance, a very important private university like Bocconi in Milan, the contributions yearly are really limited, and most of the people who study there then live abroad. So that means that the moral duty to give back to our university what we have had from them is lower and less strong than in other countries. In the University of Bologna is one of the most important universities in the world, I dare say, but there are only a few contributions. So why shouldn't we promote for instance, scholarships for young people? Why don't we promote apprenticeship, for instance, and the fact that, for instance, the needs can be actually trained by enterprises with a great contribution from the tertiary sector.
Fase ad uscire da un'emergenza.
So in this way we can actually overcome this educational emergency. We can have growth if we have investment. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Bene, credo che abbiamo...
Well, I think we have heard very interesting ideas, concepts, suggestions and remarks. So now we can start a conversation with our guests and speakers. We will start right now by Simona Malpezzi, and I ask our guest to what extent the investment in human capital does not rank first in the tasks taken over by the people in charge of this country. Thank you very much for the invitation. And first of all, I want to say that I'm sorry for not being able to be there with you, because I know all of your guests and it would have been nice to be there with you. Well, I don't really know if the government doesn't consider that a priority. I was part of the government. I am also part of the government right now, and I see that there is commitment. But unfortunately, when we talk about education or investing in young people, I mean, are we talking about the same things? Are we using the same language? Because during the lockdown months, there was certainly a growing interest towards school, but often, I must say, the newspapers talked about a model of schooling that belonged to the past and that does not represent the educational world that we have today in Italy, that is much more varied and broader. And well, why is there a push towards centralism? But actually, I think that this is not true. I mean, there's a greater thrust and push towards autonomy and independence, because I think personally that each school should be free to better respond to the needs of their territory, working together with the major stakeholders of a certain area and territory. In other words, the state guaranteeing equality of chances and of access is certainly paramount, but then schools should be free to choose how to respond to their local needs. So autonomy is the key, and autonomy could be the key to overcome the dropping out phenomenon and also the not in school and in education and in employment phenomenon, the need phenomenon. So the school should somehow be able to better understand and analyze and observe young people in order to better understand their skills, their abilities, and support them and sustain them and help them enhance these abilities and skills. So this is not the case now. So for now, school has been focused on the educational aspects, but our young people are certainly in need of education, but they also need to get tools to better develop their skills and their abilities, also in order to maximize what they learn at school. So in order to do so, we need a sort of alliance between schools and stakeholders. We need to have more open schools that retain young people, because young people should develop a certain love for schooling. But instead, when young people talk about their schooling experience, they talk about places where they are simply asked to learn things. But it's just about learning. It's about empowering them as human beings. And in particular, in this respect, we are lagging very much behind as country in a specific field, the field that the European Commission told us to observe, the so-called informal education. There is a whole system of informal education that could work with the formal education world to measure, assess, and somehow enhance that kind of education, so that would go to the benefit of our young people. So we need to develop this synergy, because a young that feels to be cared for, to be sustained and enhanced, will then develop a professional and educational career and pathway that will certainly be more successful and motivating. Our youngsters need motivation, attention, and to be followed carefully in a new and different way. And now I would like to say something about politics. I mean, I think education and schooling should not be a topic of political fighting. I've always hoped for a cross-cutting alliance between and among political parties for education, because it's so important to all of us. So even politicians should try then to adopt a broader perspective and not simply trying to somehow follow in the steps of those who are good at making themselves being heard. So we should create a large cross-cutting project altogether for education. We should redesign school. I do agree with this idea, because also when you redesign schools physically, you can set up new learning spaces, and usually when you have new learning spaces, necessarily you also have the possibility to launch and roll out new innovative educational models, better responding to the needs of our young people. I'm visiting so many schools, and I've seen sometimes very new buildings, but then the schooling models were always the same. So the desk, and then the desk of the teacher on the one side, and the students' desks on the other side. So this is a mainstream, old, obsolete model. Today's young people learn it differently. This generation is used to links, hypertext, immediate information. They are used to getting information with a click. So they need new educational models and patterns. So we need also to create new educational formats and ways to help them learn. Distance learning and distance education activities is something that actually has been existing for quite some long time, long before the COVID emergency, because remote learning was part of a larger in-presence educational project that made it possible to create a virtual classroom to continue exchanging. And so it was possible to mix and combine classroom teaching and remote teaching. So that was creating great and solid bonds between teachers and students. But I would like to end on a different note that is more personal to me. So some data were illustrated, and they're very interesting. And we unfortunately realize that our human capital is a bit poorer with respect to the number of people with a degree. So we should dare to say that our academic world has been short-sighted with respect to the best offer for the third sector. We lack a specific academic program. We need to somehow do more for that, because that is a sector that is very promising. And in particular, we need to get together the experts of education, the experts of the entrepreneurial world, in order to make the most for the third sector. The third sector needs to be more developed, because I think that we could develop top experts that are then so much sought after by companies. And then we also need 3-year degrees that are much more employment oriented. And this is something we're currently working on. But we need to understand that there is no competition. I mean, traditional degrees will still exist. And so there is no noxious competition. It's simply about modernizing and somehow updating and upgrading our educational offer. We need to somehow boost our program, because if we have a look also at the cost and the amount of university taxes, it started to go a little bit down in 2015 when the no tax area was introduced. So even deprived students could still have access to educational pathways, and that was beneficial because that brought about an increase in the number of university students. And then last but not least, we need to overcome overtight compartments approaches. When we talk about human capital, we need to have a special ministry for university, to have another special ministry for skills. If 63% of young people going to school today will make a job in the future that does not exist yet, we need to provide the youngsters with tools that do not exist yet and that will make them ready for something that will be developed over time. So the Ministry for Education, the Ministry for University and the Ministry for Economic Development should work together in order to really upgrade our university schemes. So this is something that we really need to do, and Professor Draghi expressed this idea very well, but now we need to act and to work pragmatically to do something at political level. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Malpezzi. Well, you raised other interesting issues, in particular what you said about the autonomy of schools, the need to have stricter bonds and relations with the local stakeholders. Well, I would like to elaborate a bit more on that and see what our guests think about these ideas. To what extent do they think that these things are doable and feasible? Now, I would like to ask Mr. Rambelli what he thinks. Well, first of all, thank you all for your patience, and I would like to thank the meeting for inviting me here once again. It's always so enriching to be here, and in particular, I would like to thank the President of the Subsidiarity Parlamentary Intergroup, Mr. Maurizio Lupi. So, what we've been talking about so far is certainly something that affects us from a close, and after the confinement phase, we certainly had to take stock the great level of suffering experienced by students, young people and families at large. So we started somehow to reason and reflect over possible new solutions, because we really need to reorganize our educational schemes. But first and foremost, I would like to say that it is important to take stock of the current status of the situation, and some people seem to be in favor of the design of a sort of one-size-fits-all educational model that personally does not convince me completely. I do agree on the idea that education needs to be reorganized and reshuffled somehow, but if we really want to carry out a new project and do something new, we also need to set, first of all, strategic goals. Over the last few years, I must confess, our educational system completely lacked this strategic goal and this strategic vision. And I mean, it's not a matter of political parties or political sides, and it's not a matter of left or right. In spite of my political belonging, I'm the Vice President of the Chamber of Deputies, and in spite of my political belonging, I was a bit perplexed and puzzled when faced with some approaches, because I must say that our goal and wish is to modernize school, so creating more developing skills in English and IT skills, and helping young people develop entrepreneurial skills. I think that as a successful industrialized country, we should also help our young people develop a sort of self-empowerment and a certain identity, because Italy is a strong country with a strong identity, and our culture has always characterized us, has always helped us stand out as a country. And we have celebrated our national unity not long ago, and so we really need to follow in these steps and to draw on this. We have been a model for the world for quite a long time, so if we really want to design a new project for education, we need first and foremost to fix and set a strategic goal. So we need to work on the vision. So what would we like to find in our new schooling approach? So how do we want new generations to be trained and educated? Do we want technical experts? Do we want technocrats? This is a question. And what about the negative repercussions of the globalization process? Globalization certainly has been wild so far, and it has degraded that value-based system that has been the base of the Western world we belong to. Globalization has brought about so many collateral effects, including the collateral effects of the pandemic that we're still fighting. This is a tragic battle that we're still fighting, and we're trying to do our best to survive it and to overcome it in the best possible way. Is that kind of a toxic globalization the result of a certain technocratic vision of the world and of a certain loss of a more spiritual and human-oriented vision of the world? So I think that first of all the relevant stakeholders that are at the heart of the political debate, but also the forces that are at the heart of the civil society, well, should really start a debate on this. So what do we really want to do with school and with the educational world? Do we want to educate people, men and women, representing a sort of new mankind, or do we want simply to train IT technicians, technocrats, or people with a specific competence and specific skills? You name them. I mean, to me, the best way would be to find a compromise. But I must confess that sometimes there seems to be a greater thrust and push towards a technocratic society. Sometimes that seems to be the only way and the best way. I've been a promoter of public state schooling, and today, in the third millennium, I must admit, as an observer from the outside, but also as a parent, that public state school has somehow wasted and diluted and dissolved this heritage of values that we had. Well, today, public state schooling seems to be just about teaching technical skills and specialized skills. Everything that has to do with problematic issues, everything that has to do with everything that has not to do with technical things is totally phased out by school. For instance, school does not care about drug addiction problems or does not care about, the emotional side of our youngsters and all the different sorts of issues related to that. So school does not consider the technological repercussions of digital technologies. over the last few weeks, there was a proposal about having remote schooling forever and ever, as if that was the best solution for everybody. But that would be detrimental because people would be deprived of social relationships and emotions, and also the emotions relating to being able to somehow face an exam or having to meet and talk to teachers, to classmates, to fall in love with classmates, or maybe to quarrel and have disputes with teachers. I mean, all that would be lost, and that would be such a great loss for the growth of people, of human beings. I think that, I mean, there's no question about that. We cannot afford losing all this. I mean, this should be considered as a key requirement that should not even be remotely discussed. So then we can talk about programs, duration, contents, syllabuses, and you name them. I mean, personally, I do think that politics should really take up the responsibility of such a debate. Politics should make a connection between this specificity on the one hand and the identity of our country on the other, because technocracy misuse may lead us in the future to be very good, maybe, at building new districts, but will deprive us of the great level of emotion given still today to us by great historic buildings like the Milan Cathedral or the Venice Lagoon. I mean, the cultural assets that you can still visit and admire and be amazed of in our country are something unique. And so there are things that go beyond technocracy and technicity and specialization. So I think that it would be meaningful and interesting to discuss also about this. And let's not reduce the educational debate simply to its to the nitty-gritty and to the most self-evident and banal aspects. Again, to me, public, I must say that for now we have seen a situation that has seemed to convey the idea that the public state schools were the best, and I think that there are things that need to be fixed. Maybe some competition would be beneficial to everybody. We should also consider the costs, and certainly we should put state public schools to be put in the best conditions to somehow offer the best educational solutions. So certainly we need to bring back education to its pivotal role, because to me public state schools need to somehow fill the gaps that have opened up over the last few years. So we need to redesign it, reorganize it. So cultural pluralism is certainly a must do, and conversation, dialogue and exchange are the only key to find the best solutions to improve the schooling settings for our young people, to prepare them for life.
Grazie.
Thank you, because you actually gave a cultural dimension to our dialogue. And now I would like to give the floor to Maria Stella Gelmini, asking her what she thinks about all this. We know she is deeply interested, and she has had a great responsibility as minister in this sector. And we have already, well, we would like to know what she thinks about all this. Well, I would like to say, first of all, welcome to all of you and to all the different squares that are connected in Italy. And I would like to thank you all because, well, the meeting is a certainty for us all, and we would have been lost without it. For those who go to the meeting every year, it is quite difficult, the situation, because the chaos, the crowd of people going around was a typical characteristic of the meeting. But here, well, everyone is extremely precise in adopting all the safety rules, but people are still smiling, maybe under their masks. But anyway, so, well, we've been warmly welcomed, and we can still see enthusiasm in your eyes, and this is really heartening for us in this very difficult situation. So if we read the newspapers, and well, many have underlined a parallel between this pandemic and the post-war period, the period of reconstruction. Well, I think that this parallel is actually quite centered, because all the characteristics of our lives have been turned upside down by COVID. We are facing a very, very difficult challenge. But if we look at the results that were reached after reconstruction, let's think about people like Einaudi, De Gasperi, and all that has been done in terms of industry, for instance. And we can rest assured that we cannot let the younger generation inherit a few economic support measures and not much more. So the quality of our response to pandemic is not only in the hand of those who are today at the governing positions, but also to the opposition. Bortoli is right when he says that the debate is not up to the expectations, but it is actually difficult at the moment not to refer to the fact that in 25 days, the new school year will start, and the country actually is in a situation of total chaos, because, well, distances actually failed, and this is something we must admit, and it did fail because of an ideological prejudice. It would have been enough to find an agreement between private and public schools, and let's see what private schools could actually provide in terms of really buildings and rooms to guarantee these safety measures. But well, the public school did not ask for help, and this very genial idea with these new desks, which should solve the problem, but actually they are not there yet, and we don't even know which regions will actually receive these desks. We don't know whether we have, for instance, problems at the beginning of the school day, at the end of the school day, so it's quite difficult also to organize transport. So it won't be possible to guarantee social distancing because the organization of transportation cannot start yet. So we actually we have actually left families in a very uncertain situation, and I think this is not a responsibility that of the Ministry of Education alone. It is a problem for every one of us. So also the opposition needs to face their responsibilities and to table some proposals, because also the parties of the center and the right that actually have proposed a few themes, topics like bureaucracy and taxes and the control of immigration. Well, now they have to have the courage to underline what doesn't work and to table to table some proposals, because the theme of training and education and human capital needs to be placed at the center of the political debate. This is a topic that has to be dealt with horizontally, but there needs to be clarity. We need to avoid to repeat certain mistakes, and I think that widening the number of teachers and of places where school and lessons will be organized is not the solution. This is a problem that we have already faced in the past. If we will have new assumptions for teachers in October when school has already started, well, this is not something that can solve the problem, because these teachers, if everything goes well, will start working from January. So, well, this obviously doesn't give any kind of continuity. We need to give the right economic acknowledgement to teachers, and we need to find a solution to the problem of temporary posts that we have inherited from the preceding government. So we need to have a vision and to plan training and education at a level that is satisfying for the situation. So evaluation, for instance, is something that cannot be put aside because of the pandemic. We need to maybe review our tests, but I think that the first thing that was done was actually to put aside evaluation, because this evaluation makes us think about the quality of the results we have achieved, whereas we need to go on along this path. We have the duty, the responsibility to think about something which is very precise. Even though we are in the era of technology, human capital, the importance of the human being should not be put aside, because it's always a man or a woman who governs the machine, who actually governs or manages the technology. So I think it is fundamental to table a few proposals. We did this with the Subsidiarity Intergroup, and the first proposal that the Parliament could actually approve is that regarding non-cognitive skills. That is to say, the person is at the center, and we need to actually reinforce skills that are not only cognitive, but the qualities that a person can have: creativity, problem-solving skills, the ability to listen, emotional stability. All these are elements that are fundamental to have a leading role. So these elements make a difference. The education of the future cannot just hide itself behind technology and digital technologies or the knowledge of foreign languages. We need to reinforce also those potential skills that within a group of people could really make a difference. And I do believe that this proposal that was signed by the exponents of the opposition, but also of the majority, could be approved easily and rapidly within Parliament. And I do believe that the responsibility in terms of education and training is horizontal. So we need to think of a possible support measure for those enterprises that invest in education and training. I do agree with the Bortoli when he talks about the role of the private sector in terms of training. This is something that cannot be done by the public sector alone. I believe that we can have very important experiences, contributions coming from the private world. And here, well, there is a battle that we have been carrying on with Valentina Pre, and we have actually prepared a proposal for secondary technical education, because there is always this kind of ideological debate, but now we have to start from reality. Professor Agasisti at the beginning talked about school dropout, about 26% of young people who are now NEETs, and the dramatic percentage of unemployment among young people. So we should not just accept these data, and we should not just feel that we're sorry about these data. We need to do something. We need to start changing things. So this is how we should face the COVID era. And sometimes I have the feeling that fear is prevailing and we are resisting change, as if we were actually adopting measures to resist, to just go on and to maintain the existing situation as it is. Well, I do believe that this very difficult period, this pandemic, can be faced by our government with courage, and that our government is brave enough to bring about a change. COVID can also have a positive aspect if it boosts change and reforms. But then, if that is what we want, we need to renounce to immediate consensus on the part of the public opinion and plant the seeds of actions that will be acknowledged as positive on in the future. And I am deeply convinced of the value of professional university degrees and of the tertiary segment of education, because today technical secondary institutions give a guarantee of employment that is about 90%, but there are only, well, the number of young people that actually choose this kind of school is very limited, as if this was a second-class education. And on the contrary, this kind of schools provide young people with good opportunities, because they actually meet the needs of enterprises in terms of skills and professionalism. So what we need to do is to try and give and have an increase in data in terms of investments. If we have about 30,000 young people choosing this kind of school, we need to have to be brave enough, ambitious enough to increase 10 times the number of young people choosing these kinds of schools. And we needed to invest. But where are the resources? Well, we have the recovery fund, and this is something that cannot be dealt with only by the government. This is an opportunity that concerns the whole of the country, that is to say, the whole of the powers and the forces that are within the parliament, which well, in a way, has been disempowered because of the pandemic and the emergency. And this is my appeal to Premier Conte, is that before the 15th of October, when we will have to present to the European institutional project for the recovery fund, the Parliament shall really discuss on how these resources shall be invested. And it is not enough to have a few measures to actually obtain these resources. If we want to really have these 200 billion euros, we needed to meet the expectations, and we needed to table convincing projects. So that's the way to find the resources that will actually solve the problem of the gap of digital resources. 1,500,000 young people could not participate to remote teaching because they didn't have a connection, they didn't have a PC or a tablet. So this is a gap that can be bridged, and we need to have also a plan for school buildings. We need to update our archives, so in terms of the situation, the conditions of our buildings, and we have to boost the activities of these technical institutions and schools. How can we do this? Well, we have to change our attitude. We are, in a way, sorry of how things are moving on, but we need to be more innovative. We should be ready to make a change, to table proposals that can really make a difference. And I believe that we have to do it now, because we at the opposition actually were favorable to the two first derogations from the budget laws. So we are, if we agree with Mario Draghi and what he said, we need to do something in that sense. Thank you.
Grazie mille, onorevole Gelmini, anche per avere...
Thank you, Maria Stella Gelmini, because you actually gave some very interesting suggestions, and I will now give the floor to Gabriele Toccafondi, because he has had a great experience in the past on all these themes. I would like to thank you all, because I would like to thank the meeting that is always very interested in school and education and young people. In order to answer to your question, as well as the appeal by Mario Draghi, I shall say that this is the right moment in history not only to talk about the reform of school and education, but to really make the whole country reconsider the importance of education and the schooling path, so to speak. We should do it now. The time is now, because if we do not take action now as a country, also in political terms, we could be considered cowards who do not take a position as they are described by Dante, those who do not take a position, and well, that means that these are people that cannot be criticized nor praised. But in a way, this can be actually a good situation at the moment. But I'm saying this because the worst enemy of education, of the future of young people, to refer to what Mario Draghi said, is the cowardness of grown-ups, this lack of action. This is a way to kill the hope of young people. So this is another aspect dealt with by Mario Draghi in his speech. Well, we have almost reached 200 days without a school. So we really missed school. This is simply a fact. Not only for parents who had to actually face the problem of remote schooling, but also students missed school, because young people reflect on things. And I would like to start from this, well, paradoxically positive aspect of lockdown, of this long period without school. We realized the importance not only of school as a place of knowledge, but as an educational path a series of interactions, because that's what school is. Young people that meet and that discuss and that reflect, but to do so they need the presence of a grown-up, because in order to understand reality and to develop an opinion, we all have always needed an adult, someone who was grown up, a teacher, an educator, and our parents as well. So the lack of all this actually underlined the importance of education and schools. And our young people discovered many things, as did many teachers. This is an aspect that is really positive, because we kind of woke up and saw the importance of education. So the moment is now, the time is now, and we needed to take a position and take a stance, because this is, this goes beyond the reopening of school on September the 14th. The situation is pretty confused. We are risking chaos in a moment which is not easy for our country from an economic point of view, but also from a social point of view. So, I do believe that we should really promote this topic in a debate at different levels in order to help school to open up again. There won't be remote teaching anymore, which has been useful during the lockdown, but which has actually stressed the problems of our school system, especially for those who are in a way deprived or didn't have the technological means necessary. School and teaching cannot be done by dividing classes, nor by taking classes to a theater or to a cinema. So we hope that there will be the possibility to review the guidelines that, since the end of May, include some provisions that are too stringent. So there is a first problem, which is, the immediate problem, that of the reopening of schools, and this is a very serious problem from our point of view. But there is another aspect which is more a long-term aspect, that is to say, investing in education, improving the educational path, and let's try and understand how to change school in favor of young people, and to actually have quality, merits, talents, dialogue as keywords. So we need to have a vision. So there are two levels. There is an immediate problem, that of reopening schools, which is not easy, and then there is a vision. Let's make a parallel with the football world. So there is the contemporary, who is the middle player, who has to recover the ball, but the middle player cannot have a vision of the final goal. So that's what we need. We need both the middle player and the director, the one who actually has a complete overview of the situation. So this is something that is lacking now, but it was lacking before as well. So this week we devoted our debate to the fact that we could have desks with wheels or without wheels, or is it better to have a new hiring process for teachers with open questions or not? Do we need to have, what kind of tests do we need to have? And we also have trade unions that during the pandemic actually, in some cases, some school directors received letters against the remote schooling, and the reform of the whole schooling system and of the reopening of school is actually complex, but the debate is not at the highest level at the moment. And I would like to underline two themes that actually did work, and even in this dramatic moment. That is to say, the national schooling system is just one single system made of public and private schools. And for years and years, our country didn't realize this. But now, during the pandemic, we really tried to help private schools that are, so to speak, the second pillar or maybe the first pillar of our national school system. So the two pillars are both fundamental because they actually bear the weight of the national schooling system. So finally, we could have a political debate on this, and this is a positive sign, where teachers and students could find out more about themselves. That was done thanks to the so-called school autonomy. So it's not much the level of autonomy our schools can rely on. So let's trust our teachers because they do not know what their students need. We need to increase the level of autonomy for schools other than inventing reforms that will certainly meet with obstacles. And then professional institutions and technical institutions and schools, that is about 40% of our students. For too long, we decided in our country that all people needed to attend schools that were not technical, and those who now enroll into this kind of schools and wanted to acquire very practical skills will have to find actually different subjects which are those typical of humanistic education. So, well, this leads to 8% of a dropout rate in these professional institutions, and this goes up to 30% in certain regions of our country. So if we need to understand that everyone has his or her talents, and this is something you discover when you choose the kind of school you want to attend. So this is an important reform that we should actually carry on. So to conclude, since I expressed my thoughts, I think I cannot be in the same situation as the cowards that are depicted by Dante in his work. So thank you.
Unfortunately, time flies, but we have raised many topics, so please, I would like now Mr. Giorgetti to react. Well, I'm not a real expert in this field, so actually I don't know why I'm here, but I'm usually invited to be thought-provoking, so that's why I'm here. And I'm always been considered as a person against everything that is considered as mainstream. But a first remark for the Bortoli. So, and about what he said about the fact that education is not a top political priority. Well, simply because today's politics has no far-sighted vision. Instead, today's politics has a short-term vision because, the horizon is always shorter and shorter. So now we are really going through crazy times, and the government seems to look for a consensus every other week. So, that said, this is the major problem, the lack of vision for politics itself. And of course, we also need to consider the fact that teachers are considered first and foremost as civil servants. And we also need to consider the facilities, because teachers are key, facilities are key, but then you need the vision, the project. And this is the first problem, I mean, and this is not a matter of resources, because very little is invested in schools in general in our country, even though it is hard to make comparison because the private world and the public world act differently. But certainly this is a first reflection. So we really miss the yeast to complete the recipe, because you can have as many desks as you want, you can have teachers as many as you want, but then you need a vision, a strategy, a project. Secondly, here today, once again, we have reduced education to schooling, and in particular to public schooling. Instead, again, as a non-expert, to me, the educational process is not simply about public schools, not at all. And it's not just about schools, because education starts in families, but this is, let's say, another topic. But then there are other entities and players to be considered. Let's consider associations. I've learned so much more about labor organization, being part of my football team for these 10 years, than at the university. I learned so much more there. So experiences are just key, and this is the crucial part of my remark, because yes, it is true that schools are the places where people learn skills, competences, and information and knowledge. But most of all, school is the place where people should experience things. And that means being part of a community, belonging to a tradition, to a heritage, having specific know-how and professions. So the educational world should be more and deeply connected to the employment world, because it's not a matter of remote learning. I mean, it's a matter of experiencing things, and I've learned a lot from direct experience, from hands-on experience. So it's also about being respectful to those who can teach you something. I know that may sound self-evident, but sometimes it's not. And experience of any kind entails a relation. I'm just scared to death by the social distancing applied to schools. That sounds terrible. Relations among people are key between students and teachers, among teachers. I cannot even remember how my school desk was made. I just remember that usually the best students and pupils wanted to get a desk in the front row, and all the others wanted to be, as much as the back as possible. And everybody wanted to have a seat next to their best classmates. That was the point. Okay, so, but that's where you experience things with your teachers, your classmates, and you should go back to that. At any school level, the relation to teachers is key. Is the key to experiencing things. And the internet-based schooling is just something scary. It's not just about connection issues, in spite of the excellent tools that are at disposal here, thanks to the meeting. And I'm terrorized and scared, not for that, but because, as I said, internet will complete the fragmentation and somehow explosion and blowing up process of people, because people will end up being fragmented even more. I wanted to be here physically, in person, today, because I think that you can seize, use, and subtleties only when you talk here in person, vis-a-vis. And I think this is key. And it's all about the conversation exchange. And we should recover a certain far-sighting attitude as politicians. But let's not forget the fundamental principles. Let's not get lost in theoretical ideas. Let's start from reality. I do not want to write a manifesto against social distancing, but in my opinion, an educational world without relations can't exist and really provide education as it should. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Let's now move to the end. And I will leave Mr. Lupi for the final word. So I'm asking him to be short. Thank you very much to all of you, and I'll be extremely short. I won't talk for 10 minutes. And usually when politicians say I'll be brief, they are not at all. But just two key messages. First of all, every year we have at least 2 encounters of the Parliamentary Intergroup for Subsidiarity. This is the first one. And it's very important to get together to share ideas about commonly shared problems. But usually we do not make the news and the headlines because we never quarrel. But here we're talking about education and schooling, and this is something that must get us together. Last year we have drafted proposals, and Maria Stella Gelmini mentioned them, and we hope that these proposals will be soon adopted and approved by the Parliament. The non-cognitive skills are very important. It's a very important proposal. And also the other one, because if we can have a 4.0 industry, so enterprises and companies can update their sort of machinery capital by investing in machines and equipment and plants, but companies that invest in training and education are not to recognize this cost, because if you invest into new machinery, plant and equipment, it's okay. You can then have some sort of tax breaks and amortization. But investing in schools and investing in education should also be recognized. And Gabriele Toccafondi said it clearly. Incredible things happened during the lockdown. And I'm sad when people say what your intergroup is there for. But first of all, we have not quarreled about the presumed competition between private and public schools. School is one, and it's made both of private and public schools. And 350 million euros have been allocated to all schools, both private and public. And this kind of sharing is incredible, is an amazing result, but nobody talked about that. Secondly, I would like to link up with what Mr. Bortoli said. So, investing in young people doesn't create consensus. And as Professor Draghi said, also, subsidies cannot create hope. And it is true, because the history of our country says one very simple thing. Every time we had to make a new start, we invested in training and education. Don Bosco in the 19th century, Don Gnocchi in the 20th century. And well, history shows us that when private institutions were established, they were not created for rich people, but to provide support for those who were deprived and poor. That's the strength of Italy. Olivetti, and then Teacher Manzi, and the literacy process of the after-war period. And then we had blue-collar workers in the 70s to be qualified to improve our manufacturing sector. So today, we all agree on the importance of this great challenge for everybody. This is important to be said. Thank you very much, all of you. Okay, we have money. Okay, if overnight we can decide to allocate 3 billion euros, and I repeat, it's 3 billion euros to buy some new desks. Okay, there's no objection about money. It's not that we do not have resources, so money is no object. So now it's time to design a project that needs to be ready by October the 15th. And this is a signal to Ricciardi. So, Mr. Ricciardi, please, schools cannot be closed any longer because this is the first and most important resource that we have in our country. And don't be so uncertain about this, because it's a shame that you say still today we don't know if schools will be able to reopen. Schools are our most important asset, so they have to open again. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much to all of you. Wow. It was a very enriching 1 hour and a half. Thank you very much to all of you, and I wish you a very good meeting. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Days of hunger, won't you buy